The bustling streets of Cincinnati were alive with the usual hum of city life. Cars zoomed by, pedestrians walked with hurried steps, and the distant sounds of a street performer strumming a guitar filled the air. Among the chaos, a small, unassuming table sat on the sidewalk, adorned with bright, colorful paintings. Each piece told a story, some of hope, some of love, and others of a world beyond imagination. Behind the table stood a young girl, no older than 12. Her name was Emily Parker. She had soft brown hair tied in a loose ponytail and deep, expressive eyes that held a weight no child should bear. She wasn't selling her artwork just for fun or as a school project. No, Emily was fighting a battle, far bigger than most people could imagine. She was battling cancer. The diagnosis had come a year ago, a rare form of leukemia. It had turned her family's world upside down. The hospital visits, the painful treatments, and the medical bills that seemed to pile up like an insurmountable mountain. Her parents, already working multiple jobs, were drowning in debt, but they never let Emily see their struggle. Yet Emily knew. She saw the exhaustion in her mother's eyes, the way her father lingered over the pile of unpaid bills late at night. She had heard their hushed whispers when they thought she was asleep. It was why she had decided to do something about it. Emily had always loved to paint. It was her escape, her way of expressing feelings too big for words. And so, she set up a small stand outside a local cafe, selling her artwork to anyone willing to buy. Every dollar earned was put toward her treatment. Every painting sold was a step toward survival. People stopped now and then, admiring her work, offering a kind smile or words of encouragement. Some bought a piece, others simply walked by, caught up in their own busy lives. Emily didn't mind. She had learned that kindness couldn't be forced. Then, on this particular day, something extraordinary happened. A man in a dark jacket and jeans walked down the sidewalk, hands in his pockets, eyes scanning the street with quiet contemplation. He looked familiar to some, but most people didn't pay him any attention. JD Vance had always preferred blending in. The best-selling author, venture capitalist, and now a U.S. senator was a man of the people, never too proud to walk the streets. He once called home. He had grown up in poverty, knew the weight of struggle, and had spent his life working to change that. As he strolled past the cafe, something caught his eye. A small girl sitting at a makeshift stand, her frail fingers gripping a paintbrush, her face lit with a quiet determination that tugged at his heart. He slowed his steps, watching as she carefully arranged her paintings, her lips pressing into a thin line when someone passed without stopping. JD stepped closer. "Hey there," he said gently, kneeling slightly to meet her eye level. "These are really beautiful." Emily looked up, startled. She hadn't expected anyone to stop, let alone someone who looked at her work with genuine appreciation. "Thank you, sir," she said softly. He picked up a painting, a breathtaking sunset over rolling hills, the colors blending seamlessly into one another. "You made this?" She nodded. "I make all of them." He studied the brushstrokes, the depth of emotion in the piece. "You've got talent. How much are you selling them for?" Her lips parted slightly before she answered. $20 each. JD raised an eyebrow. "That's a steal for something this good." Emily smiled, a small flicker of pride in her tired eyes. But then JD noticed something else. A small sign taped to the front of her table. It was written in careful, uneven handwriting, "All proceeds go to my chemotherapy treatments." His heart clenched. He glanced at Emily again, taking in her fragile frame, the slight paleness in her cheeks, the way she tugged at her sleeve as if trying to hide the IV marks on her arm. "You're selling your paintings to pay for chemo?" His voice was soft, but there was something deeper behind it, an edge of emotion. She nodded. "My parents are trying really hard, but it's expensive." She hesitated. "I just wanted to help." JD felt a lump form in his throat. This girl, this brave, selfless girl, was fighting a battle no child should ever have to face. And she was doing it with a resilience that reminded him of his own mother, of the countless people he had met who refused to give up, despite the odds stacked against them. He reached into his pocket and pulled out his wallet. Without hesitation, he took out a crisp $100 bill and placed it on the table. "I'll take 5. Emily's eyes widened. "Are you sure?" JD smiled. "More than sure." But he wasn't done. He glanced around, then turned to the small crowd that had started to gather. "You see this young lady right here?" he said, his voice carrying just enough authority to make people stop and listen. "She's selling her paintings to pay for her chemo. I think we can do a little better than just walking by." Murmurs spread through the crowd. People began to step forward, pulling out their wallets. A woman bought 2 paintings. A businessman in a suit handed over a $50 bill without taking any change. Someone else dropped 100 into a small donation jar. Within minutes, the stand was surrounded by customers. Emily watched in shock as her paintings flew off the table, her hands shaking as she accepted the money. She looked up at JD, her voice barely a whisper. "Thank you." JD knelt beside her again. "You're not alone in this, Emily." His voice was steady, reassuring. "You're going to beat this, and we're all going to make sure you get the help you need." Tears welled up in her eyes, but they weren't tears of sadness. They were tears of gratitude, of hope, something she hadn't felt in a long time. By the time the last painting was sold, the donation jar overflowed with cash. But JD wasn't done yet. He took out his phone, made a few quick calls, and within an hour, a representative from a major charity arrived. They had heard about Emily's story, and they were ready to cover the remaining cost of her treatment. The moment the news was announced, the crowd erupted into applause. Emily's mother, who had just arrived after hearing about the commotion, burst into tears as she hugged her daughter. JD watched with a quiet smile, his heart full. This wasn't about politics, fame, or fortune. It was about people, about stepping in when someone needed help the most. As he turned to leave, Emily ran up to him, pressing one of her paintings into his hands. "For you," she said. "So, you remember today." He looked at the painting, a beautiful sunrise breaking through a dark sky. Hope. JD knelt one last time, his voice gentle. "I'll never forget." And with that, he walked away, knowing that a simple act of kindness had just changed a life forever. As JD Vance walked away, the weight of the moment settled deep in his heart. He had seen struggles before, poverty, hardship, desperation, but something about Emily's resilience struck a different chord. She was just a child, yet she carried the kind of strength that many adults would crumble under. He glanced down at the painting in his hand. The sunrise, vivid oranges and soft pinks breaking through the dark night sky, seemed almost symbolic. It wasn't just a painting, it was a message. Hope always finds a way. Meanwhile, Emily stood at her table, looking at the empty space where her artwork had once been. For the first time in a long while, she wasn't worrying about how many more paintings she would have to sell just to afford another round of treatment. The kindness of a stranger, no, of a whole community, had lifted that burden, even if just for a moment. Her mother wiped her tears and pulled Emily into a tight embrace. "Baby, I can't believe this," she whispered, her voice trembling. "You did this." Emily shook her head. "We did this." Word of what had happened spread quickly. Within hours, social media lit up with videos of JD Vance stopping at the table, his words of encouragement, the overwhelming response from the crowd. News outlets picked up the story, and before long, thousands of people across the country were sharing Emily's artwork, asking how they could support her. That night, JD sat in his office scrolling through the flood of messages. People from all walks of life were reaching out, offering donations, wanting to buy Emily's paintings, and even volunteering to help other children facing similar struggles. He realized then that this wasn't just about one girl's fight against cancer. It was a reminder of how powerful compassion could be. The next morning, Emily woke up to something she never expected. Her mother was sitting at the kitchen table, her eyes wide with disbelief as she scrolled through her phone. "Emily," she breathed. "Come here." Emily rubbed her tired eyes and patted over. On the screen was an email from a renowned art foundation. They had seen her story and wanted to feature her paintings in a special charity auction, with all proceeds going toward her treatment and other children battling cancer. Emily's mouth fell open. "They really want my paintings?" Her mother nodded, unable to hold back her tears. "They don't just want them. They believe in you." Days turned into weeks, and Emily's story continued to inspire people far beyond Cincinnati. The art auction raised more money than she had ever imagined, enough not just for her medical bills but to support other families going through the same battle. Then, one evening, there was a knock at the door. Emily opened it, her heart skipping. A beat when she saw JD Vance standing there, a warm smile on his face. In his hands was the painting she had given him. "I had to come back," he said. "I wanted to show you something." He turned the painting around, revealing something new. His signature, along with dozens of others. Some were from senators, governors, and CEOs. Others were from everyday people, nurses, teachers, firefighters, each leaving a note of encouragement next to their name. "This painting isn't just yours anymore, Emily," JD said. "It's a symbol of everyone who believes in you." Emily traced her fingers over the signatures, her heart swelling with emotions too big to contain. JD knelt down beside her. "You started something bigger than you realize. You didn't just sell paintings. You reminded people of the good in the world. And no matter what happens, that light you've created, it's never going to fade." Tears slipped down Emily's cheeks, but this time, they weren't tears of fear or uncertainty. They were tears of gratitude, of strength, of knowing that she was no longer fighting alone. She looked up at JD and smiled. "Thank you for believing in me." JD placed a gentle hand on her shoulder. "Emily, you believed first." And with that, the little girl who once sat on a street corner selling paintings for her survival now had an entire world rallying behind her. The days that followed were nothing short of extraordinary. Emily's story spread far beyond what she or her family could have imagined. Celebrities, philanthropists, and ordinary people from all walks of life reached out, wanting to help. Donations poured in, not just for Emily, but for countless other children battling cancer. Hospitals and charities dedicated to pediatric cancer research began using Emily's paintings as symbols of resilience and hope. Prints of her artwork were auctioned off at fundraisers, raising tens of thousands of dollars. A well-known children's book publisher even approached her family with an idea to turn her story into an illustrated book with her own artwork, gracing its pages. Emily, once just a girl fighting to survive, was now a beacon of inspiration. But the biggest surprise came one afternoon when her mother received a phone call. It was from the director of one of the nation's top children's hospitals. "We'd like to offer Emily a full sponsorship for her treatment," the woman on the other end of the line said. "She won't have to worry about medical bills again." Emily's mother dropped the phone in shock. Tears streamed down her face as she turned to her daughter. "Baby, they're going to cover everything, every treatment, every bill. You're going to get the best care possible." Emily's breath caught in her throat. She had spent so long worrying, painting, hoping, never daring to believe that something like this could happen. Her battle wasn't over, but for the first time, she felt like she wasn't fighting alone. One evening, as she sat in her room sketching, her mother walked in with a letter in her hand. "It's from JD," she said softly. Emily's eyes widened as she took the envelope. Inside was a handwritten note. "Dear Emily, you have taught me, and the world, what true strength looks like. Your story isn't just about selling paintings. It's about courage, determination, and the power of a kind heart. You didn't just help yourself. You reminded all of us what it means to care for one another. I still have your painting, and it will always remind me of that special day. Keep creating, keep inspiring, and never forget, hope always finds a way. Your friend, JD Vance Emily, clutched the letter to her chest, her heart swelling with emotions she couldn't put into words. She looked out her window at the setting sun, the sky painted with hues of pink and orange, the same colors she had used in the painting she had given JD hope. It had always been there. It had carried her through the darkest days, through the pain and uncertainty. And now, because of one act of kindness, because of a community that came together, because of people who believed, her hope had turned into something even greater. Future. As she picked up her paintbrush again, she knew one thing for certain. This was only the beginning of her story. Months passed, and Emily's journey became a testament to the power of kindness and resilience. Her treatments continued, but now she faced them with a new sense of strength. No longer burdened by the weight of financial worry, she could focus on healing, on creating, and on giving back in ways she never imagined. With the overwhelming support she had received, Emily and her mother made a decision. They wanted to help other children who were fighting the same battle. Using a portion of the donations, they started a small foundation called Emily's Brush of Hope, dedicated to providing art supplies to children in hospitals, giving them an outlet for creativity and expression during their toughest moments. One day, as Emily sat in her hospital room sketching, a nurse entered with a surprise. "You have a visitor," she said with a warm smile. Emily looked up, expecting to see her mother, but instead, JD Vance stepped inside, carrying a package. "Thought I'd check in on my favorite artist," he said with a grin. Emily's eyes lit up. "Mr. Vance," JD chuckled. "You can call me JD." He placed the package on the bed. "I brought you something." Emily carefully unwrapped the box. Inside was a brand new set of professional watercolor paints, brushes, and a blank canvas. "I figured you might need some fresh supplies for all the amazing art you're making," JD said. Emily ran her fingers over the smooth surface of the canvas, her mind already buzzing with ideas. "This is amazing. Thank you." JD sat down beside her. "I heard about Emily's Brush of Hope. That's incredible. You're not just inspiring people, you're changing lives." Emily smiled shyly. "I just want kids like me to have something to hold on to. Something that makes them feel like they're more than just sick." JD nodded, his expression filled with admiration. "You're doing something powerful, Emily, and I want to help." Over the next few weeks, JD used his platform to spread awareness about Emily's foundation. Donations skyrocketed, and soon hospitals across the country were receiving art kits for young patients. Schools held fundraising events, artists donated supplies, and companies stepped in to support the cause. One afternoon, as Emily was finishing a painting, her mother rushed in with tears in her eyes. "Emily, you won't believe this." She handed her daughter a newspaper. Right there on the front page was a headline: "Young Artists Battle Against Cancer Sparks Nationwide Movement." The article detailed how Emily's journey had touched lives across the country, how her paintings were now symbols of hope, and how her foundation was making a real difference. Emily's hands trembled as she read the words. I never imagined." Her mother hugged her tightly. "You've turned something painful into something beautiful, sweetheart." The following week, Emily was invited to Washington, D.C., where JD Vance arranged for her, to meet with other leaders, philanthropists, and healthcare advocates. She shared her story, not just as a cancer patient, but as a fighter, a dreamer, an artist who had turned hardship into hope. Standing in front of a crowd, she took a deep breath. "I used to think that I was just one person, that what I did wouldn't matter. But I've learned that even the smallest brushstroke can create something big. If a little girl sitting on a sidewalk selling paintings can make a difference, imagine what we can do together." The audience erupted into applause. As JD watched from the side, he knew that Emily's story was far from over. She was a reminder of why he had entered public service, not for politics, but for people. Before she left DC, JD handed her a framed version of the letter he had written her months ago. Only now, at the bottom, there was an addition. And "This is only the beginning." Emily grinned as she traced the words. Yes, it is. With her paintings, her story, and a world that now believed in her, Emily Parker wasn't just a little girl fighting cancer anymore. She was a symbol of something greater. She was